Alright guys, I have watched hours of news, watched the actual UN, emergency meeting with the Russia Federation. I don't know why they called that, but hey, God bless them. And, had Ukraine there, US there, and blah, 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 blah. So, both parties are dirty, guys. And I want you to hear me out before you go. Oh, you Putin loving piece of shit. No, I don't like Putin. I think he's a thug. I don't back his actions in Ukraine. I wish none of this happened. I wish we were all smoking the peace pipe by the campfire and singing Kumbaya. But that's not the world we live in. My motto is peace, love at all costs, and then last case scenario, click clack. Ukraine's still asking to be in NATO, and then Russia is still asking Ukraine to not go into NATO because that's on their fucking doorstep. So I can understand why he would do what he's doing. Okay, you got to realize, folks, Ukraine is an hour away from Moscow. Moscow is equivalent to the White House. So you can actually launch a Tomahawk missile and in 30 minutes hit Moscow where Putin's at. So does he have a right for concern? I think so. Whether you think that's pro-Russia, I think everybody just needs to sit back and breathe right now. This is World War III implications. This isn't us going into Iraq. Okay, these guys can touch us. And I think the entire world, including if you look at Russia, they have massive protests over there right now. They're calling for peace. Ukraine's calling for peace. I think everybody in the world wants peace right now. And so we as Americans have to realize that we broke the Minsk agreement or the Minsk agreement, whatever it's called. And that's basically saying to Russia after the Cold War, the end of the Cold War, we said, look, we're not gonna expand NATO any further towards your borders. And so what did we do? We've been advancing and moving NATO closer and closer and more countries closer to Russia's border. So I don't want to justify Putin's actions, but we have essentially been trying to corner this guy. And if you corner an animal, it doesn't matter how small or delicate or unlikely that animal can win. It will fight. It will fight. So you got to realize that, guys. When Ukraine's an hour away from their capital and you try to put Ukraine into NATO, which allows U.S. troops to come on deck and sit right there on their border, that's a cause for concern for Russia. So, all in all, I'm not defending Putin's actions. I wish this never happened, like I said again. But I can see the cause for concern. And instead of sending delegates and peace treaties and common sense shit we should be doing, we're sending guns to Ukraine to fight off a major world power. It just doesn't make sense. And I think it's hilarious how a democratic government is so pro-weapon when it comes to these instances. They're against Americans having guns, but we'll give them those fucking Ukrainians, we'll give them those Syrian rebels, we'll give them the fucking whoever wants to fire our proxy wars. That's a whole nother issue I'm not getting into with this video. I'm just gonna say you can't expect Russia to just take it on the chin forever, guys. We ripped up the deal. We moved closer with NATO when we said we wouldn't. And so it's like, yeah, well, why didn't they just ask us not to? They've been asking us not to. Well, why didn't they just, call a meeting? The meeting that they had where we signed the fucking peace treaty that says we're not going to expand NATO, we wiped our ass with it and expanded NATO. So, not defending Russia. I'm just saying, we're fucking poking the bear. You know what I mean? And, China, I think it's very sad. But China's kind of saying the same thing. They're kind of like, hey, we're out of this. We're not sanctioning Russia. You know what I mean? America's been fucking with them. We don't blame them for doing what they did. You know, and I go to RT News, and guys, trust me, man, I know RT News is Russian funded by the government. And so I finally unsubscribed for the first time. And because they're calling it a special operation. They will not call it an invasion. They will not call it what the fuck it really is. And so, you know, again, they have to, or else they're going to go to jail or be fired. So it's a problem with public funded news corporations. Ask Canadians about that. CBC is one-sided. That's a whole nother issue. So, but it all kind of ties into, guys, we as Americans have to back up our treaties if we plan on keeping the peace. And when we rip the treaty up, we can't be surprised when shit like this happens. Because you're cornering this animal known as Russia. And keep in mind, guys, they have like 15,000 nukes. They have enough nukes to blow up the world 13 times, and I think we do too. Which I don't know why we went past the 12th. We were already good. But we could blow up the world 13 times. Both of us. So, this isn't Iraq. This isn't Afghanistan. This is a whole different creature right here we're talking about. And again, I think the Russian people are calling for peace. I think we're calling for peace. But at the end of the day, we can't say we're being peaceful by putting a Gatling gun on the Ukrainian border. That's an hour away from your capital. That's not peace. So, Russia wants to be able to sleep at night. Ukraine wants to be able to sleep at night. We want to be able to sleep at night. We're going to have to compromise, guys. You know what I mean? I don't know why we aren't talking to Russia and trying to bring them into NATO. Wouldn't that be a better world for everybody? You know what I mean? So, I think it's our obvious anti-fuck you Russia rhetoric that has led to this. And again, I wish this never happened. I'm not defending Putin's actions one bit. I think it's disgusting what they're doing right now. You know, and who really loses, right? It's not us. We're not feeling bombs on our borders. The Ukrainians are losing. So I think Russia's called for Ukraine to be independent, and I think the U.S. is trying to make Ukraine pro-U.S. / independent, which you can't be on the fence and off the fence. You're either on or off. So we got to get off the fence. They got to get off the fence. Let Ukraine be independent. And I think that's a worthy compromise. Let's stop expanding NATO. They have a right to not want. We wouldn't want Russia in Cuba. Remember that whole fucking thing? We weren't having it. So it's the same thing. We can't, except it's not the same thing. They were as close to Florida as Ukraine is to their White House. You know what I mean? So I just wish peace, prosperity, and love on all of y'all. Hopefully, I hate to say it, but hopefully Biden can whip up something. God help us all, right? It's got to be peaceful, and we're both going to have to bend. If we don't bend, how can we expect them to bend? You know what I mean? So, This affects everybody. This is a lose-lose for everybody. I think everybody wants this thing to stop. I think everybody, if you realize where nuclear reactors are in Ukraine, you may or may not want a war zone going on right there, because non-nuclear weapons can cause a nuclear catastrophe. So it's kind of a big deal, folks. We don't want to keep the fighting going. So that's when the U.S. says we're sending more weapons. What does that say? You know what I mean? What is that saying? We're just going to keep fucking agitating the Russians. And, I can see the argument for agitating the Russians, but this isn't, again, you agitate Iraq, they got a suicide bomber. It fucks up a little convoy of ours. You agitate Russia, there's World War III nuclear holocaust implications. It's kind of a big deal. So Putin's got to stop being a thug, and we got to stop being a gang against that gang and moving up in his territory. I hate to say it. We got to show some respect if we want to get some respect. And bringing Ukraine into NATO is not going to be good for Ukraine, as we can see right now. It's not going to be good for Russia. So why don't we just back the fuck off a little bit? We have pushed this animal back to the point where they're wanting to strike out. You know what I mean? Oh, I get the idea, guys. I feel you. I want everybody to be in NATO. But when you're talking about not bringing in the Russians, but you want to bring in everybody around their border, well, that's a cause for concern that they have. Rightfully so. So hopefully we don't have to learn the hard way. Hopefully nobody does anything stupid, but I'm seeing a whole lot of stupid going on. They're sticking with their guns, we're sticking with our guns, and peace doesn't happen when we do that. We're both going to have to bend a little bit. So Russia needs to pull out of Ukraine, and America needs to stop fucking, hyping this thing up and pumping the Ukraine full of guns and weapons, which, again, this should be a diplomatic issue. You know what I mean? Guns right now is going to just make everything worse. And the whole world's hurting right now. We don't need any more drama. We really don't. So I think Russia's had to make a point. We don't want fucking NATO on our borders any more than they already are. It's not a good feeling for them to sleep at night, man. You know what I mean? Russia's going through a lot of shit too, man. I think their economy is right around the size of Florida's economy. So you can imagine that big ass country. And our little fucking tiny state here in the bottom right corner has the same amount of economy. So, I think we can win this Cold War just like we won the last one. That speak softly, carry big stick, and we stopped expanding NATO. That's why we had a peaceful agreement with them. That's how we ended the Cold War. I think NATO's important. Fuck yeah, I think NATO's important. But just to expand it is only going to inflate things worse than they already are. And I think if we come to the agreement that, look, we're going to stop sending weapons. We're going to stop sending a bunch of fucking, offensive measures. And you guys need to pull the fuck out.